Hello, good afternoon, and welcome to Midday Live. To the NKonya and Alavanyo conflict area, TV3's Komla Kluche takes a look at government's effort at brokering a peace deal between the two communities. Now, some critics have argued that leaders of both sides have taken entrenched positions over the disputed parcel of land, and that is hampering efforts.
Communities have been involved in a bloody conflict over a disputed land for decades. Both have interpretations of who the rightful owner is. The two have agreed there is truth in the position of each other. What is, however, the reason behind the targeted killings and the protracted conflict? Government became the mediator in the first and second settlement approach, but was unsuccessful even at the instance of the President John Dramani Mahama. The head of the Police Council and Vice President Kwesi Mr. Arthur is championing a third approach, this time at the instance of Okpekpewukpe Dagadu the 8th, the paramount chief of the B traditional area.
I wanted us to meet at home in Konya, Alavanyo. We have to meet in Pando because there's no agreement. And the Vice President of the Republic of Ghana cannot go to a place where he wants to meet his chiefs because the chiefs don't want to meet there. The cost of the conflict is now getting rather too high for us. The cost of this particular conflict, the retaliation, the unending retaliation, an eye for an eye will leave us all blind. Because the economy in the area is suffering. Our children cannot go to school. I hear that some schools have been destroyed. And therefore, we are even destroying the future generation through this conflict. We are spending money, keeping a military detachment. We are spending money, maintaining a police presence in the area. And this all costing money, diverting resources from better uses to be used in this way.
But will the two parties agree on governments taking over the disputed parcel of land which is the subject of conflict?
If that is the only solution that will bring peace, that's all.
Do you ascribe to suggestions that the piece of land being disputed should be taken over by government?
No, that one we shall think over it. Because when the government takes over that land, where will the people feed? On the same time, when the government takes over the land, well, there will be a lot of work, a lot of development projects coming up from our area.
It is becoming clear there is more to the conflict. Suggestions it is being fueled by unknown faces outside the two communities for material gains such as lumber felling and wheat cultivation is a worry for the mediator.
It is also a fact that there are some people outside who are fanning this conflict because they want to survive. They want to make money out of the situation. And let us not give those people the chance to make money at our expense.
Where renewed clashes last year following gunshots that left one soldier wounded. The violence in the two communities has persisted for years despite several mediation attempts by government, religious leaders and other groups. Komla Kluche, TV3 News, Pando.
And we stay with this subject a while longer. I've been joined on the line by Emmanuel Bombande. He's the Executive Director of the West African Network for Peace Building. Mr. Bombande, good afternoon and thank you very much for your time.
Good afternoon, and permit me 1 second to correct that I'm now the former Executive Director. I'm handing over after all my efforts in one.
We hear it's 22 years. Congratulations to you, sir.
Thank you so much.
All right. We go to the substantive issue. Does government's decision to take over the disputed parcel of land bring finality to the conflict between Alavanyo and NKonya?
Well, first of all, from my perspective and sitting where I am, you have to appreciate that two things happened when the Vice President went on a working visit over the past week to NKonya and Alavanyo. Do not forget that the first thing was to encourage and motivate the people of Alavanyo and NKonya for dialogue, and in so doing to remind them that if efforts in the past have failed to bring a mutual satisfaction from both sides, the opportunities are always there to explore. And in so doing, he boosted the hand of Togwe Dagadu, who offered to be a mediator. So that was one. The second was the presence of the state and the authority of the state. He made it very clear that even whilst government would encourage dialogue at all times, government would not allow people to violate the laws of the land under the cover of a conflict. And to do that, the strong arm of the state will be present in the military and the police in the proximity of these two communities to ensure that people who break the laws will be held accountable. But as part of this, the parcel of land in dispute could then be confiscated by the state, in which no one will have access to it, and for that matter, it will no longer become a legitimate excuse for the conflict. Now, if you look at that very carefully, depending on how the parties are mutually able to work together to ensure that violence ends, and that there is no reason to continue constantly seeing the cycle of violence occurring, it did not come across as if government had made that final decision categorically that the land has been seized. And that is why there is a conditionality from how I followed the event.
Okay, but yes, what we are told government intends to do with that particular parcel of land is to build a military base there. And if that happens, is it very likely that, well, give it 10 years, 20 years, 50 years, when government thinks there is enough peace, it can move out that military base or military camp?
Now, because of the nature of, you see, when you are talking about the military base, do not necessarily look at it on exactly the piece of land in dispute, because the piece of land in itself in dispute are very mountainous and very difficult terrain for even both sides to access. But there is that area that is proximate to the two communities, which obviously can serve for the purpose that you described. But let me put it this way. To the extent that in that community, the military presence will be very near to be more swift and robust in quelling violence and apprehending people who break the law behind the conflict, you can see, yes, the dividend in terms of the way you described it. But the reason why you need to look at the other caveat is that the violence does not recur, particularly in recent times, simply because people go back to the land as a source of dispute. It is precisely because for many years there have been disappearances of people. There have been people killed. And it has been difficult to apprehend, prosecute these people, and to that extent there was impunity. That in itself reinforced the cycle of violence and exacerbated the violence. It took a life of its own and became a new source of the conflict. Now, if the military presence can stop that, end that cycle of recrimination, killings and counter killings, vengeance and counter vengeance, it will not eliminate the recourse to the mutual hatred and suspicion, and now make the land to be the only source of contention. And if government is already there on the basis of a military presence, it will, in my view, very quickly create a new environment in which, when trust and confidence begins to build up, then you can see a sustainable solution to the crisis.
But apart from government's direct involvement like it has done, is it possible that either side could take it to court so we can use the law to, first of all, find out who really owns the land, and then also probably place an injunction on the usage or passage of that particular land? Can the law be used in this case, or from where we've come, the army or government should take it over?
When you frame it the way you have done it, it is not as if to say the parties have not gone to court already. Keep in mind the parties have gone to court. Now, if you listen to the two sides in their own narrative of their perspective of the conflict, it is clearly what I would call it clearly emerges that when they went to court, the court ruled in favor of the NKonya. So that judicial decision was taken, and yet for years and years there has been a reinforcement of that cycle of violence.
All right.
But what I'm saying therefore is that it is not as if to say the parties have not gone to court.
Right.
But what do you do to ensure that peace is prevalent on the ground? It's a whole complete different matter.
Okay. We'll have to leave it here for now. Thank you very much, Emmanuel Bombande, for the education. He is the former executive director, or the immediate past executive director of the West African Network for Peace Building. Was giving us an update on government's decision to take over the NKonya and Alavanyo land, the disputed land between those two communities that has led to the loss of lives.